we'll do editing. Yeah, I mean, unless either one of us, I don't know. Like if I start to like pick my nose or something, then I'd edit that out. See, like I could edit what I just did out, but I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, this good-looking mother effer, say hi.
Hello to the dozens of people that are listening out there. Privileged to be here.
I'm trying not to say anything because I want the camera to be on you. That good-looking motherfucker is Brent Looby. He's a dear friend of my wife and I, and he and his wife, Karen. Hi, Karen. Who helped you set up that shot, which is
yeah, didn't help. She actually set up this shot.
She actually, yeah. Let's say that like it is. But I mean that's
so, shortly. There also might be an invasion of Germans here. You know, sometimes they like to storm the Capitol, and I mean shepherds. So
German shepherds, right? Exactly. No pun intended. So yeah, as you may have guessed, Mr. Brent Looby is in Texas, yes, and he's a big Longhorns fan, and he owns my ass because I'm a USC fan. And the game, there it is. See, he knew. Yeah, what can you say? Got to give the guy respect.
I'll take credit for that.
I'll even do this, and it pains me. This is how much I love Brent. Hook 'em horns.
I appreciate that. I know how. Yeah, I know how. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, no, yeah,
we're both basking in the glory days right now. So
yeah. So we'll just let that go. But we've known each other for a while. Dude, tell everybody how you met Donzelay, and we've developed our friendship.
Yeah, that was a really interesting moment. I actually went back for today's discussion and read some of the email correspondence from that day, and so that was June 19th. We know it as Juneteenth around these parts, 2009, and
nice.
So I met the lovely Mrs. aboard American Airlines flight 355 from Atlanta to Dallas, and we had a rather eventful takeoff and lack of takeoff for a better conversation, which developed into what I would say has just been an absolutely amazing friendship over the last 12 years. So sometimes those circumstances take us in just crazy directions, you know, and it was really interesting that day. I was thinking about that whole time frame. And so not to go too deep into the politics, but remember back then we had just elected President Obama. And
right.
We felt like that was a pretty divisive time, you know, for what it was. And I remember on the way, so I was in Atlanta for a business trip. Donzelay was in town to take care of her mom. And I'm down there at baggage claim. And I'm just looking at everybody at baggage claim, thinking about what the societal climate was at the time. And I was thinking to myself, you know what? Nothing brings people together like baggage claim. You know, I mean, people from all socioeconomic various demographics, you know, they're all there for a common cause.
That's interesting. That's right. Because we're all there for a common purpose. And
that's right.
Doesn't matter what you smell like, look like, believe, think. I need my baggage as much as you need yours.
That's right. Regardless, you know, regardless of how much you paid for your ticket, you're there to get your bag. Fast forward 2 days, nothing brings people together like near certain death. So it was a very interesting,
Can I elaborate on that story?
Absolutely.
A little bit? Okay, so this is what I hear from my wife. She's gone to Atlanta, as Brent said. She liked to spend a lot of time with her mother. And they got on the same flight. Brent remembers it because Brent, but the other thing, I didn't even really say like who Brent is, but Brent's an amazing guy. He was literally a fighter pilot for the Marine Corps, Top Gun, badass. Real guy right here, not Tom Cruise, not Val Kilmer.
Got an aircraft carrier parked out back.
Okay, that's just how they roll in Austin. That's just how it goes. Know. Brent looks out the window, excuse me, on the flight, he looks out the window as they're starting to take off, and flaps were...
Yeah, the wings weren't configured for takeoff. And so I was just reading my paper. I was in seat...
Minding your own business.
Yeah, I was in seat 19A. We were on an American Airlines Super 80, which for those of you, I don't believe they're in service any longer. Hopefully not. I was in seat 19A. Your wife was immediately opposite me in 19F. We were both on the window seats.
Ah,
And I was reading the paper, and, airplanes make noises, when you're doing pre-flight takeoff, pre-flight checks, pre-taxi checks, post-taxi checks, all these things. Airplanes make noises as you're making adjustments. And so we got out to what's called the hold short, which is the line that it's the line of demarcation from the active duty runway. So
right.
you're on the taxi side of it, or you're on the runway side of it. And while we were sitting there waiting for takeoff, I heard the hydraulic motors spool up, and I looked out the window and noticed watched what are called flaps and slats, which is another story we'll talk about here in a minute. I almost got a new call sign out of your wife's emails. She called it straps. She called it the flap. But
details like that are not important to her.
Yeah, they're not important. But the short of it is the wing was no longer configured for takeoff. And so in my mind, I'm thinking we're going back to the gate. There's a mechanical problem. I flew an old jet, jets break, you go back, you get it fixed, hopefully, and then you take off. And I thought we were just going to go back. Well, a few minutes go by, I'm still reading my paper, and throttles spool up, and we cross the hold short. And I'm looking down, watching the line go under the wing, and then wondering, okay, are we going to take the runway back? Because there was a line of aircraft behind us. Maybe we need to cross to go back. And no, we square up on the runway, and the throttles come up. And so that's when I hit the little call button on the, for the flight attendant. And as we were accelerating, I was thinking that lady's probably not going to get up and come talk to me.
Right.
So that's when I unstrapped, and I hopefully didn't make a complete ass of myself on an airplane loaded with people, but I suggested in very terse terms that the flight attendant reach out to the captain and let him know that the aircraft was not configured for takeoff as we're accelerating down the runway.
Oh my God. Every time I've heard the story, still, this is why you're top. This is why he's a Top Gun. Calm and cool under pressure. And he's giving every benefit against every doubt. Of course, they know that they're not configured for takeoff. They know this. We're just going to do the leper. Oh, no, we're actually taking off. And then the only thing going through his mind is, and this is the humanity of it, which I love. Like, I hope I don't make an ass out of myself. Like, excuse me, if we take off, we're going to crash immediately.
No, it's kind of interesting, because it's June in Atlanta. So, it's really hot. The airplane is fully loaded with gas, so it's extremely heavy, so you've got all these physical factors that are against you. And that flight attendant told me that I needed to, keep in mind, I've got my whole body up against the guy sitting in 19B as I'm, shouting at the flight attendant. And he's probably like, here's this strange dude, like, now in the era of social distancing, like right in your face. And she yelled back at me that I needed to sit down unless this was an emergency. And that's when I pointed at her and I said, and it's you need to let the pilots know the aircraft's not configured for takeoff. And so as I sat back down, I'm looking out the window, like studying the wings again to make sure that I'm not seeing things. And I'm not. And we're still accelerating. We're a little north of 100 knots, which is, 115, 120 miles an hour. That's how fast we're going at this point. And
man.
And I'm looking between my legs and I'm like, where is the fucking ejection seat? I want off this thing. But I did, I did have to come to terms with one thing, that I wasn't going to be the one to run up to the, because we were still in kind of a post 9/11 mindset, right? Everybody was.
So you're thinking there's an air marshal's going to do, yeah.
Well, yeah, I knew that there was, I felt that there wasn't, you don't know that, but I wasn't going to be, I decided that I wasn't going to like unstrap and run up and start beating on the doors. Like, we're just going to see how this rolls out. And we took what's called the high speed exit, which when you go, next time you guys out there in virtual world, when you look at the runways, everything is perpendicular to the runway, but there's occasionally some that kind of curve off. And
Right.
those are deliberately there so you can exit the runway at a greater rate of speed. And so we took that, and it was a really interesting emotional journey from that point, because it went from, you know, a moment of sheer terror, like, oh shit, I'm gonna die,
Yeah.
to a big sigh of relief, to, oh shit, I'm going to jail, because I just stood up and
During
interrupted
takeoff.
takeoff
Yeah.
of a US carrier, you know. And
Yeah.
so I was, I called Karen on the way back to the gate, and told her, I was like, I'm not sure how this is going to work out, dear, but I'll call you in a little bit. She's like, okay. And
Exactly.
and there's a guy. So as we're taxiing back to the gate, the captain comes up on the intercom and says that we've had a maintenance issue, that we're going to taxi back to the gate. We're going to get it fixed up, and we'll be back on the road shortly. To which this guy sitting directly in front of me in seat 18B cups his mouth and goes, yeah, we've got a maintenance problem in seat 19A. We're going to get that taken care of, and we'll be back on the road. And I was like, dude, that's not funny. But turns out he was an Army guy, you know, there on business as well.
Oh.
And I jokingly made a comment to the guy that I, you know, accosted next to me.
Right.
You know,
Right.
it's like, hey man, when the marshals come, you got my back, right? And he just kind of smiled and grinned, and he was like, man, don't worry.
Did they understand what had happened?
They knew that apparently, and to hear it from, you know, your wife and her goddaughter Toy are the only ones that I actually have a real perspective of from it, was that, you know, you're worried about how it was perceived. There was no misconception that something was wrong.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
And so, you know, we went back to the gate, and that's when I started marking time when we got back to the gate, because I was fully anticipating that that we were going to.
It's a weird headspace when you stand up and you're like, no one's saying anything, and I know what's going to happen because I know how to fly and I'm familiar with everything. Like, just the way you stand up.
Right.
She must have realized after the second, you know, command you made, really, was that, oh my, this is not like Joe Traveler talking to me. This is someone who knows how to fly.
Right. Or at least has some, you know, I mean, knows a little something, maybe, you know, saw a YouTube video or something, you know, but, you know, at least, but the thing that was probably most interesting to me in retrospect was, keep in mind, this was still kind of the coming of age of the information exchange, you know, that we know now as social media, you know, Facebook, Twitter, all of those
pretty much
kind of in their infancy. Yeah. And so I was very attuned, because at the time the job I was in was dealing with a lot of information exchange in spectrum related technologies. And so I was very astutely aware of people's, you know, usage of that. And so I was looking around, kept studying the cabin to see people's reaction to what happened. And I thought that there would be much more chatter about it, but there was absolutely almost zero, except, so your wife, this is my introduction to your lovely wife. She looks across me as we're taxiing back after he made that after the captain made that comment, and she mouths to me, "Thank you. I want to live." And I'm just kind of literally, my hands are like,
right.
Yeah.
Right.
As you and I both see this as the same way. She views me as like sent from heaven to.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah, as if this was an amazingly selfless act, right? You know what she, and I'm happy that she has never come to terms with this, because I so much appreciate how much she loves me. But what you and I understand this to be was probably the most selfish act any human being could ever, you know, inflict upon.
Self-preservation, baby. That's
right.
The humanity of the story.
You know, 180 people got to benefit by proxy of my amazingly selfish act. you know.
That's that's very that's very shows you humility that you possess, because clearly not a dummy. They don't put dummies behind the throttle, the levers, the in the cockpit of these 40-50 million dollar machines.
Well, let's continue that journey as we go back to the gate. So now I'm 45 minutes have gone by. I've talked to my dad. I've talked to other people. My dad, of course, is furious, wanting me to reach out to the NTSB, because my dad at that time was flying for DHL. And it's like, kind of want to maintain. At the time, you couldn't find me on the internet at the time. And so I wanted to.
Oh, I remember. I'm not saying anything. We can talk about that in a minute. Yes.
Yeah, but I was trying to maintain
low profile. Very low profile.
Well, yeah, because keep in mind,
you knew.
I didn't look like Marine pilot that day. I was in. I'm going to date my, with my fashion. Keep in mind, 12 years ago, guys out there listening, cargo shorts, linen shirt, and Maui Jims up on the head. Hadn't shaved in a couple of days, so I didn't look like anybody that knew anything about aviation. And so we get back to the gate. 45 minutes have gone by, and nobody from law enforcement or from American has addressed that anything has transpired. Nothing. Although one thing I did notice, and I saw your wife, and God bless her. I love the fact that she's a worker. She's a busybody. She gets in and, she gets up, walks back, and I'm thinking, okay, she's going to the restroom, right? And our very first actual conversation, she comes back to comfort me. God bless your wife. I mean, she is the purest soul. I know. Her and Karen are
pretty amazing.
Yeah, her and Karen are, I don't know how they weren't raised together. They are the purest souls on the planet.
They are.
And she comes back to tell me that I spoke with the flight attendant, and she said that there was nothing to worry about, that they had it under control the entire time. And Don Zalay just wanted to ensure me that we were okay. To which I said, ma'am, that is absolutely not true. You heard that woman scream at me to sit down unless this was an emergency. She had absolutely zero idea what was going on.
That's right.
And then Don Zalay looked at me with those big, beautiful eyes, and they got wider, and
they got wider. Yeah.
They got wider, and she goes, oh, you're right. And she sat down for a moment. And about this time, I'm starting to see people, American Airlines ground crew with maintenance vests on. So I'm like, oh, I'm feeling like there was something amiss. And so, like, likelihood of going to jail, or at least, surviving the questioning will be better than 50-50 at this point.
Sure.
And so Don Zalay, and it was a great moment that we got reintroduced to her goddaughter, Toy. They had no idea that they were sitting next to each other,
Right.
And so we got reintroduced there and made, great friends with Toy as a result as well. Don Zalay's mother, God rest her soul, was concerned about her leaving for whatever reason. And then Don Zalay just had the premonition. She's like, Mom was very uncomfortable with me taking this flight. Now this has happened, and, I've talked to you. And so they grabbed her bags and got off the airplane. And I'm still doing okay at this point, because I come from a land, like, I've strapped on 3 jets to go fly, and sometimes the 3rd jet breaks and I can't even go fly. So I understand aging equipment just doesn't work sometimes, right? And so that's about the time when the flight attendant, who we'd had a pleasant exchange before takeoff, and then our relationship went south pretty quick thereafter, brought the captain back to me, which seemed odd that we were going to have a conversation in the middle of the cabin rather than.
It was about an hour later, right?
About an hour and 15.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So in retrospect, probably should have had me go up there where we could have a more discreet conversation rather than with a captive audience. And so as she's walking back with the captain, I get the, he's trailing her, and I get the,
Okay. Okay.
and I'm looking at him, and I just went, right here, dude, you know,
Uh-huh.
and he introduces himself, and he's like, and you are, and introduced myself, and he goes, and you do, and I said, I told him that I flew Prowlers, and he's like, and that is, and I was like, okay, dude, first and foremost, if you're in, and so anyway, went down a little bit of line, and he said, a little further down that, and he said, well, when we made the decision that we made, I was a little concerned that somebody like me might be in the back and wondering what we were doing. And so eyebrows are kind of going up and ears are
Right.
perking up. And he said, we weren't getting the configuration indications that we were looking for in the cockpit. And so, did you hear us cycling the flaps and slats? And I was like, I heard you making, doing your pre-taxi checks. I didn't see you recognize them coming up or down. I did, however, recognize that they came up and we took the active duty runway with a wing that wasn't configured for takeoff. And he's like, well, yeah, we were actually, since we weren't getting the configuration that we're looking for, we decided that we were going to try and make the final configuration call on the runway. To which I responded, well, sir, because it is his ship, right? I mean, that's
Sure.
that's what folks don't understand is like, he signs for that airplane. He is responsible for everybody. He is truly the captain of the ship. And I said, well, sir, I'm not sure, or I'm not familiar with American SOP, which means standard operating procedures for those out there, because there are rules that we have to, abide by in any aviation community. I said, I'm not familiar with American SOP, but where I'm from, if there is a question, and particularly a mechanical question, I'm not going to try and troubleshoot it while trying to wrestle this thing airborne. It's just,
I mean,
when there's a question, there's no question, right?
right.
And to his response was, well, you saw we never got it above a safe airspeed, right?
Oh my God.
And I said, well, yeah, I'd say we were just.
So let me ask you, was he trying to save face because he realized that you were the real deal and not a whack job? You were answering all of his questions?
That's the next part when he says, hey, you look like you could use a drink. Can I buy you a drink? And I was, I wasn't as advanced as I am now, but I'm sure I really did need a drink, but I was like, that little bastard is not going to buy me. And so I was like, wow. Yes, sir. I said, I'll take you up on that offer, perhaps after we get airborne.
So there was a dance going on there.
Right.
Yeah. Wow.
And so what it boiled down to is I knew that I was distressed and upset. And it took me a while to figure out why I was upset about this, right? Because I come from, land of aging aircraft that break.
Right.
And but what I distilled it down to was I'd lost confidence in my aircrew to make the right decision at those times. And
right.
So
and that's an uncomfortable place to sit with, or thing to sit with.
Right. And so I'm okay with flying, an aging, rusty, airframe. What I'm not comfortable with is somebody that doesn't make the right decisions.
Yeah.
And so that's when I decided I would get up and grab my bags and leave. And so I get up, grab my bags, and that's when people started talking to me. People were sitting around and they said, "Oh, you're leaving?" So then I had to basically brief everybody within earshot about why I was leaving. And I told them, I said that aircraft, I told them who I was, what I did, what had happened. And I said, and airplanes break. These are old aircraft and they sometimes break. I said, they're going to get this thing fixed and you're going to be, on your way shortly. I said, however, for me, I'm going to miss my connection and there's another flight that will get me home at a time. So I'm just, so I didn't lie to people necessarily.
No, but you didn't need to explain everything. Right.
Right. And so I left it at that, grabbed my bags, walked off, and
boy, that escalated quickly.
Yeah, and I told the captain, I was like, well, that took about an hour and 30 minutes while we're sitting at the gate. So it went from an hour and 15 to the conversation, another 15, you know, for my, you know, double-digit IQ to kind of scroll through all of the emotional things about why I'm distressed and why I
I
can't.
beg to differ, Brent. I beg to differ. You handle that pretty elegantly, my friend. I know you're taking the piss out of it, but at the same time, you know, the captain coming back and having that conversation with you. I didn't know about this in this detail before. That's another not well thought out decision.
Yes.
And then and so it really puts all the onus and the pressure on you. And you already stood up and said, "Hey, man, the emperor's not wearing any clothes. This
Right.
plane is not going to fly." So, wow, that could have gone really poorly.
Yeah, we would have skipped across I-85 into something, hopefully something soft.
I got to just interject there. I mean, well done. And yeah, that is a heroic maneuver. And I totally understand what you're meaning. Dude, I'm not being a hero. I'm just trying self-preservation. And see, to me, that's beautiful because that's really honest. It is true. And, you know, nothing is what it seems, right? Sometimes selfishness is the greatest act of selflessness. And that's just something that I wish more people would contemplate. To hear my wife say it when she told it to me, Donsley, Captain America saved the plane. We were going to crash. He stood up and started yelling at the guy. And of course, she embellishes everything.
Oh, I wish you could have been here at the retirement ceremony, because hearing her tell the story again, it was like it was yesterday. And, you know, and with your wife, there's embellishment, there's drama, there's all types. I mean, it's very eloquent, very, you know.
Oh my God, she puts on a show now. Oh no,
Yeah.
that girl puts on a good show.
Yes,
But she's not wrong either.
No.
Again, you know,
No,
she puts a little sauce on it. That's all.
Yeah. No, those feelings are real, and everybody has their own take on it. So absolutely.
100%. And she just thinks that Brent hung the moon. And I was like, well, let's meet Brent. And so you and Karen came out here, and Brent's a foodie, and he's got a great palate. It's much more refined than mine. Probably more than
I don't know, that lamb you made was pretty tasty.
Well, thank you. You're kind. But yeah, so we went out and had a really nice meal at a place we've not been to in LA. I think we went to the Nickel Diner for breakfast, actually. Or was that another time?
That was, they run together. So the dinner you're referring to, that's when the Raiders owner was over there a couple tables away from us. You remember that?
Good memory. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Al Davis was there.
I think that was our first dinner. And, you know, I sure hope the Nickel Diner, I don't know if they're surviving this mess or not, but
I don't know, man. I don't know. It's crazy. But yeah, we met, and I was like, this guy's all right, man. This guy's all right. And his wife is a sweetheart. And she does, I've never said that before, but she's just a very similar temperament and heart to Donsley. And it's good for guys like us. It's very good for guys
absolutely.
like us.
And for those of you listening out there in the world, it's like, so I married a single mom, and there's the great thing about that is usually the bar is set really low. So so you know, if I'm in trouble, I earned every cent of it. You know, so
you did not shoplift the pootie.
I did not.
Okay, that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna let that sit for a moment. Okay, moving on.
Just asking that for just a moment.
Brent said something else. Brent did work. He has to watch what he says, but you know, he worked at a very high level within procurement for the Department of Defense, correct?
Yeah, so I was blessed based on some of the clearances that I held. You know, one of those jobs that's so secret, I don't even know what I'm doing, you know. But what was really fascinating and rewarding was that at the time I was a major, and then the next time was as a lieutenant colonel. But you typically don't get those touch points. You know, guys from my community, aviation community, typically don't get to be involved in, you know, any type of Department of Defense acquisition.
Ever.
And so it was really wonderful experience that you got to engage with, you know, these program officers that develop all of these, you know, military, you know, whether they're offensive, defensive, or, you know, intelligence surveillance type equipment. You get to engage with academia. You get to engage with all these research labs, all the branches of, and you bring
That's pretty cool, man.
intelligence
That's
agencies.
pretty cool.
Yeah, and you get to like basically help people solve real problems, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it was an extremely rewarding experience. And that's what I was doing when I actually, you know, I was there working with some folks at Georgia Tech Research Institute, which is one of the finest research institutions in the United States. And I was there working with them. That's when I met your wife.
Education matters, folks. Shout out to Georgia Tech.
Oh, shout out to nerds.
Yeah. Keeping it nerdy, baby. That's how we're doing this, by the way. Thanks
Yeah,
to computer nerds, code nerds.
Well, yeah, it took me a while to like turn the audio and video on. You know, you had to point me down to the lower left of the screen.
Hey, listen, don't feel too badly. I've done, I don't know how many of these, and I still sometimes just go, put my finger on the camera, you know, so. But listen, we're in a pandemic. I'm used to having a studio. My joke, I'm like, I show up and I blow up, right? Right. But, you know, you got to produce the whole thing, and then you're in your house and, you know, blah, blah, blah. But so listen, that was, I won't say much, except during that time period when you're going through that transition from flying into the Department of Defense, what you just talked about, I know because my father used to work for Los Alamos Scientific Laboratories, which are now the National Scientific Laboratories. He had a very high clearance in my mind when I was a kid. And then I started to learn more about the security clearances. Mm-hmm. So I know a little bit about that. And then having been in Iran, when we were in Iran, you know, he was working for the Iranian government Department of Defense, or they call Ministry of War. And so there were a lot of American counterparts that he was working with, you know, Westinghouse, Bell Helicopter, McDonnell Douglas, Hughes Aircraft. Mm-hmm. And I forget the other one, big one, but these defense contractors. And so I was always surrounded by spooks or spies. Yeah. Or intelligence officers or counterintelligence officers. And there's like, it gets, you know, you can get granular with it. And so when you start talking, the first time we meet, I'm like, oh, okay, homie knows what's up. Because I just know that I know a little bit. That's all. But you start talking about it, and you're very, you know, one of the characteristics. You're perfect. I'd have hired you. You know, you gotta be smooth with it, and you gotta watch what you say, and you can't let it be obvious that anything even occurred, or that anyone got too close to something, or that's the nature of it, you know. And that's so intriguing to anyone listening to this, and good. But
some of the best actors on the planet.
You're a damn fine actor. I see you. I've never said it before, but now that you brought it up, I see you. I see you, Brent. You know, you told me, you're like, listen, man, do you know what they do with those phones? That's a sending and receiving device. And this is 2009. So if you remember, that's 2 years after the iPhone was introduced.
You mean my Chinese surveillance device right here? Yes.
Exactly. And so Brent starts breaking it down to me, and I'm like, oh, fuck, he's right. He's so right. Of course. He goes, you think just because that screen's dark, it's not still on? It's not sending and receiving? I was like, right. Well, now it's so obvious. Like, we've just gotten used to it. You start talking and you go on your Instagram feed, and an ad comes up for whatever you were just talking about.
Right.
And you were warning me about Yelp back in the day. And it's just now it's so prevalent. I think Yelp is probably child's play.
No, you just ultimately, you submit, right? That's what actually ends up happening.
That's it. Yeah. You just submit. It just becomes a part of life, and that's how it goes. And so here we are. But you made a really interesting turn, and like really interesting turn to me. You tell me that you're going to school and you're getting your master's. And I'm like, right on, dude. Look at you. He's just a coffee achiever, right? Flying planes, working in the Pentagon. Nope, got to go get my master's now. And I was like, right on, Brent. And Brent gets his master's, and then he and his two of his buddies, who I've still not met for obvious reasons, you guys started a new business. Tell us about that.
Yeah, let's take a step back in how we got into graduate school. So,
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So I'm kind of, you know, we were talking to our daughter Jessica when she was getting ready to go to college, that it's so much more difficult than when you and I were trying to get into school. So much more difficult. Wow. You know, I, as a kid out of high school, I could not or would not be accepted into my alma mater today. Just absolutely would. It's too competitive.
Why? What's the deal?
It's it's too competitive, and I was too dumb as an 18-year-old. You know, I just couldn't get in now.
I was a stumphead as an 18-year-old too. I really was.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
But it was.
Well, we'll
you know,
segue later on about how my
Yeah.
dad suggested that trade school might be the best path for me.
My old man suggested when I said I didn't want to go to school, he goes, "Hey, the world needs garbage men. Go ahead, buddy.
Knock yourself out."
I was like,
Um,
oh, dude.
yeah, but it was like, choose your bliss, whatever that, you know, may, you know, just, I'm not paying for it. So that was his thing, was like, you do your
At
thing.
the same talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was,
Yeah.
but it's one of those life altering moments, right? You know,
Sure.
that puts you on the path to righteousness. There's always everybody, regardless of where you come from, you need a course correction at some point, you know, and that was
Couldn't agree more.
one of numerous ones that I had, but probably the one that set me to where I am now, probably the biggest one. So as I'm twilighting out of the, so I was on the trajectory in the Marine Corps, you know, like being the company man, you know, like Pesci and, you know, those guys are going to be a made man. Right. And,
Right.
but Karen and Jessica had never moved anywhere with me. Anytime I was stationed anywhere around the country or overseas, I was always, you know, by myself. We call that, the jargon is geographic bachelor or geo-batching.
Okay.
And so I was a little bit older when I joined the Marine Corps. I actually, surprisingly, I showed up to officer candidate school on my 27th birthday. So most of the folks that are there at OCS are 21, 22 years old, maybe 23, but they're usually right out of college, straight into service, right out of the service academies or right out of college. So I'm already, and
Wow.
when you're in your 20s, if you're 5 years older than somebody in your 20s, you know,
It's
like
a big deal.
Yeah, you're not the same person you were at 18 to 21 to 23 to 27 to 30. You know, it's a big deal. And I'd worked for almost 4.5, 5 years as a manufacturing engineer, which I'm a little surprised you didn't bring up my first job out of college, which making breast implants. Did you know that? Yeah.
I think you said making breast implants.
Yes, pride of the fraternity right here.
You know, honestly, I think I just fell in love with you all over again.
Yeah, there's so much depth here. And
There is. Well, and there's breadth to it.
Well, there can be, yeah, depending
True,
on
no doubt,
depending on the
no
CC.
doubt.
Yes, absolutely. But yeah, so my first job out of college was, you know, I grew up in a small West Texas town, Midland, moved to Austin, fell in love with this. This is one of the most beautiful cities on the planet. And after I got out of school, got a mechanical engineering degree. This was 1993, and I couldn't find work here in Austin, and largely because my GPA was so horrible. But I did survive. I did get an engineering degree from, you know, University of Texas. But I found, this will date us, but you will understand it. I submitted a resume and cover letter answering an ad in the paper to a company in Las Colinas, up a suburb of Dallas, Fort Worth. Medical device manufacturer. Had no idea what they were, you know, what device they were making, but went up there for an interview and they gave me an offer. And turns out they were actually just north of you guys, up near Santa Barbara, Goleta. Their manufacturing facility was in Goleta, and my first, you know, charter was to help move that manufacturing facility from Goleta to Texas. And so yeah, worked there for about 2 years. And if you're like wanting to learn manufacturing, it was the perfect size company, because you get raw material coming in all the way through all the processes, all the, you know, equipment, through finished packaged product on the way out. Heavily regulated. And when I say medical devices, the FDA regulates those things like they're life-sustaining devices. It's a class 3 medical implantable device. And very interestingly, this was at the time of the Connie Chung, you know, scandal, where like Dow Chemical, everybody's going down.
Oh,
and
okay.
there were 7 manufacturers at the time, and I was working for one of the 2 that had actually survived. And so I worked there for a couple of years, but I'd always wanted to get back to Austin. And I guess even before that, I always wanted to go be a naval aviator. That was my passion. That's what I wanted. But what I didn't understand was the work. And, you know, I mean, you had to have some academic, you know, success to achieve those things. Right.
Right. Right.
And so this was post Gulf War. So there was massive base realignment and closure, massive downsizing of the military, and nobody would pay attention to a guy who wasn't a service academy, specifically one that had the GPA that this kid had, is 2.6. And so it just wasn't, you know, it wasn't going to, like, you know, impress anybody.
Keep the dream alive.
That's right.
2.6 GPA flew.
That's right. So, I mean, just like Dave Letterman, right? You know, hey, there's hope. If you're a C student out there, there's hope for you.
There's still hope for you.
That's right. And, but so I left there. I went from silicone to silicon, and I got a job making computer chips here in Austin.
Nice.
And so I worked there for a couple, and it was a great place to work. Folks may know it as Motorola. Motorola really largely doesn't exist any longer, but it was a great place to work and good people, but it's still going to work, right? You know, I mean, you're never excited about being at work. You're never upset to be at work, but it was just, you know,
right.
You're just going to work so you can buy your time to spend with your friends or do whatever.
That's right.
And so I literally stood up in my cubicle one day, and it was a labyrinth of cubes as far as you could see north.
Oh my God.
North, south, east, west. And I was like, you know, I can always come back and do this. And so for the Marine Corps, previously I hadn't considered applying to the Marine Corps because my dad was in the infantry in Vietnam. I'd heard those stories, and I bought into the stereotype of what it was to be a Marine. And yes, it is challenging, but there's the most amazing people on the planet are in the Marine Corps. But I didn't think that that the Marine Corps was more for me. You know, I was a kid of the 70s and 80s watching Top Gun, you know, seeing Tom Cruise looking pretty dapper in his flight suit, pretty girls, you know, chasing after him. And keep in mind, it was also peacetime, right? You know, this is the early mid 90s, and you know, now we're 97. Absolutely. Still peacetime, right? 9/11 hadn't happened. And so the thoughts of like being in your flight suit, landing on boats, cruising around the Med, you know, letting people adore you, that was really appealing, you know, for a kid from West Texas. And but one of my really close friends from high school, who was much more cerebral than I was, he is a true academic. And he actually went to the Naval Academy. He didn't have the eyesight that I did at the time. And so he was going to the Naval Academy to be a backseater. He was going to go be goose, you know.
Okay.
And we had kind of conspired in high school that he was going to go through the Naval Academy. I was going to go through the University of Texas, and we would somehow meet somewhere down the road. Well, that didn't work out for me. I started working for a living. And he invited me out. Not only somewhere did his eyesight get better, but he actually did what's called a lateral move over to the Marine Corps. You know, the Marine Corps is under the Department of Navy. We're like the Army's, Navy's, Air Force, you know, if you will, or Navy's, Army, Air Force. And so now he's in the Marine Corps, and I was like, wait a second. That guy didn't seem like the guy to be a Marine. He was kind of the nerdy, like, I mean, he's talking like really, really like thinking on a higher plane kind of guy. And now he's flying fighters in the Marine Corps. So I went out to San Diego to the last Navy Air Show out there in '96. And I hung out with him and some of his squadron mates. And I was like, these are some people that I could easily assimilate and get along with. And so I went back home to Austin, I put my package in. I applied to both the Navy and the Marine Corps. It's the exact same application. And the Marine Corps came back and said, you know, I got a guaranteed air contract. And they said, come on down. And so that's how I ended up at OCS on my 27th birthday. Because if you wanted to be a commissioned officer, you had to be commissioned in the Navy by the time you were 27, in the Marine Corps by the time you were 27 and a half.
I was going to say, you were probably at the upper end of that.
Yeah. So I got, birthday's late January. I got my commission on April 4th, and which left me with effectively 2 months to go, although I wouldn't have met the deadline. So,
Wow. All right. Wow. Thinking about what I was doing in those years. That's crazy. Okay. I didn't know that. That's a good story. I love that.
this is the long path to getting back to the graduate school conversation.
Yeah. No, that's good stuff. All right. So wow, what a twist that is. And they said, oh yeah, you can come and learn how to fly planes with us.
That's
You've
right.
got a C average. It worked.
Yes.
So, okay. So what that tells me is that clearly they see the intelligence, they've taken the psychological evals, all that has to go on. It's in the testing, right? And maybe some people don't know what I'm talking about. That's okay. But they realize there's more than meets the eye with the number on the page for this kid's GPA. And the reason I bring that up is, people they will okay, my first year at school, in college, I didn't even know they had this. I was playing football. That's the only reason I went, to get in my father's good graces. And I didn't know what the hell I wanted to do. I got a 0.9 GPA my first trimester of college. Like, that takes honestly, let's just give me a hand for that right there.
Actually, that beats mine. So let's go back to the conversation with Dad having it. So I did 1 year at junior college, and it was full scholarship to this junior college, and I almost failed out of junior college. Who the
boy
fails out of junior college? I mean, we're talking like
that
this.
Guy.
This is the 13th grade, right? It's not like this is hard. And so I got 4 C's and an F.
And what was your F in?
English.
Boy. I mean, you just got success written all over you.
I know. I'm brimming with it, right?
Yeah.
So that's when Dad and I had the conversation about perhaps trade school might be the path for you.
What did that feel like when you heard that? Do you remember?
It was it's not what I wanted to hear, but it's what I needed to hear.
Okay. So that's what I'm getting at. I'm glad you said that. So I want to just bring that around. Then I want to hear you tell the rest of that story. If you look and if you listen, like I had a 0.9, I was on the dean's warning list. Yes. I was like, oh, I guess I really do have to go to class. This is really serious. Oh, okay. I know it sounds retarded, and then you have a C average, and your dad's like, maybe go to trade school. My dad's like, maybe go be a garbage man. That was his way. That was your dad's way. But it didn't take for me right away as well as it should have or could have for you. But it's emotional. There's emotional blocks, and that's what it is. And it's not. Nobody's stupid, really. Well, there are some stupid people, but nobody's really like a dummy. It's just that there's all these other blocks in the way, and you got to find out what's going on. And only when that gets worked out can the person like blossom. So I guess what I'm saying is I still have a chance to be a fighter pilot.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
You've heard of the fighter attack project, right? So the FA project, the untitled FA project.
Yes, I have.
There's still an opportunity for you.
See, and this is how do you not love this guy, right? I still think that is an amazing idea. It's not gone anywhere. It's sitting back. You're learning how long it takes to get a deal in Hollywood.
We'll get to that after I've got to tell you this one last thing about graduate school.
Go do it.
So fast forward to, we're talking about the geographic bachelor and the career trajectory that I had in the Marine Corps. And you come to these crossroads, right? Now we're beyond a few things. I'm mature, I'm responsible, and
don't get too far ahead of yourself, kid.
Well, modestly.
Yeah.
I haven't, as we would say in the aviation community, rolled, inverted, and pulled, which is yes.
Yeah.
So, but as I was segueing out, I had to make a choice to get off of that trajectory in order to come home and be with it. And God bless him, General Bob Sofji, G-Man, if you're out there. very few people, I'm one of the blessed ones that actually got to pick and choose when they took a bullet to the head of their career. And had it not been for that man actually agreeing and allowing it to happen, that's what he did. To which he said,
Wow.
"You're welcome." So, but he got me, I told him that with complete understanding of the repercussions of my choices, I'd be eternally grateful to him if I could get closer to my girls. And he understood that, and he granted that. So it was a
wow. Because you really were on the path.
yes, and I'm still thankful for him for doing that.
Yes.
So, but as we come back,
What a guy.
yes, he's an amazing individual. He's still out there, fighting the good fight, for all
Right
of us.
on.
But as I'm, about to, twilight out of the Marine Corps, because at this point, I'm now off that trajectory. So I have to figure out what's the next chapter going to be. And for me personally, I just didn't see myself going into commercial aviation. And I think, we might have a cameo here shortly. But I just didn't see myself going into commercial aviation. I wasn't going to go back and sit in a cubicle anymore. We'd already done that, even though I said I could go back to it. And so I thought, well, this might be an opportunity to take advantage of another opportunity that was granted to me by the GI Bill, which is an amazing asset. You got to go out and earn the opportunity, but it can be a life altering for a lot of people. And
I've found out as I've gotten older just how amazing that thing is.
Yeah.
Being a veteran and the GI Bill.
Yes. And so as I'm putting together my application to go to the Macomb School of Business here at UT, my wife, who you well know, but the audience out there does not know, that a true academic, she's the smart one in the family, is she's looking, she grabs my transcripts. She mouthed to me, says I'm lost for words. My transcript sitting on, come here.
Yeah, come on in.
She grabs my transcripts off the table, and she's looking at them with her reading glasses, and she's like, "What are these?" And I was like, "Oh, those are my transcripts. I need them for my application." And she's looking at them with her reading glasses on.
Right.
And she looks up over the top of her reading glasses, and she's like, "Really?" This is the first time that my wife understood how not stellar of a student I am. And I was like, hey, I had other things going on. It was like Monday night was $1 long neck, Tuesday night was $2 pint night,
Talk to me, Brent.
Probably a mixer. Saturday was a football game, and then Sunday was NFL. There was Wednesday was my only hope of getting something accomplished for the week, right? And
it's a strong program, by the way.
Yeah, but fortunately for me, one, I was a legacy. I don't think that they needed the dues, but I had a lifetime of experience. I had, at this point, 22, 23 years of work experience. That's what got me into the school.
Oh, okay. She's not going to make an appearance?
Well, I just didn't want to interrupt.
You're not interrupting. Come on in. Hey, Karen. Look how pretty you are.
Thank you.
Yeah,
see, that's the super patriarchal response to a woman who is really smart.
Yes. Yeah.
I just have to point out that, we know each other. So,
You and I both definitely outkicked our coverage on this one.
100%. 100%. Yeah. So what did you think when you saw his transcripts?
Well, he explained it pretty well. He did.
Yeah. But what did you feel? What was like, Jesus, really? Guy? What?
He had a good time in college. He had a good time.
I didn't have a good time. I just had really bad grades and low grade depression and a grade 1 concussion. So college was not fun for me.
No.
Yeah, no, it wasn't good, but it's interesting to hear the stories going along.
Yeah.
How did you, what did you think about when you heard that? I don't want to revisit it too much, but when you heard the airplane story?
Oh, I'm at work when he called, when he was sitting on the plane. And he's telling me he can't make it on time and we're going to have to play it by ear on when to pick him up from the airport.
Right.
And oh, by the way, something kind of bad happened, but I can't talk about it now. And oh, I have to get off the phone because the flight attendants and the pilot want to talk to me. Don't worry. I don't think I'm going to get arrested, but it might be a possibility, you know, and then the phone clicks. So what do you think? I mean, what does one think about that?
I mean, Brent, you've got some issues, and I don't ever want you to change. It's good. It's good. I can't talk to you now. The air flight attendant and the pilot are coming, and I might get arrested, but I might not. But the possibility exists. I can't talk by.
Yes,
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
and it's just as animated as you hear him speaking to you today. I mean, there's no effusive emotion along with that. It's just the fact it is what it is, and you know.
Right.
Yeah,
Amazing.
just like there was a time in 2008, and I was a liaison for special operations in Iraq, and we were getting just crushed with rocket fire. And I dove in this bunker, and it's me and Peruvians were running security for the embassy compound there, and so me and two Peruvians are in this bunker laying face down while shit's blowing up everywhere. And my pocket starts ringing. So they gave me a cell phone that had a New Jersey phone number on it. So she could call like whenever. And,
Oh, wow.
and the phone starts ringing, and I lift my head up a little bit and I look at the two Peruvian guys, and, you know, we could communicate, you know, fortunately, but I pick up the phone and I could see it's Karen, and I answered, and they started laughing at me, and I'm like, hey, and I could hear she was out with her friends. They were at a dinner, and it's loud and like having a good time. And I was like, hey, can I call you? I was like, can I call you back here a little bit? You know,
I was none the wiser till the next day.
As well you should be.
Right.
What is wrong with you? Who answers a phone when they're taking fire? Under artillery fire. Who answers? I can't talk right now, honey. Love you. Bye.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
a good story, though.
Didn't want her to worry.
Yeah, didn't want her to worry, because there would have been hell to pay if you hadn't answered while you're taking mortar fire.
Well, no, she used to tell me to call her every time when I got back from a flight. So
Yeah. No, I get it. Listen, I can't walk out the door to walk the dog without Donsley going into, you know, a little bit of that panic mode, which is, you know, from her growing up. But when Daddy and Uncle Martin would walk out the door, Mama and Aunt Greta walk out the door, that they, you know, they got taught from an early age, we may not make it back. It's dangerous out there, but we got to do this because, you know, this is the thing to do, and this is the only way to be, and we need our rights. So there's always that little twinge from Donsley. Wants to hug me and kiss me and like goodbye. I'm like, Jesus, I'm just gonna take the dog for a walk.
never goes away.
No, it never goes away. And you know, to her point, I don't have a crystal ball. None of us do. Maybe that, you know, this dog walk's the last dog walk. Don't know.
Yeah.
Tomorrow's a promise to no one.
That's true. That's true. On that cheerful note, I still, it's so funny you said that. I'm not going to say too much more, but I have never forgot about the FA project. I still think it's amazing. We can just tease it like this. It's great. I'll let you two tease it. Just
so
whatever you feel comfortable with.
No, and you guys, so it started with her, as most great things do. I've got a wealth of experiences that largely are not believable if you weren't there to witness them.
Well, I think you just gave us a nice little taste of that.
And I was planning to write a book called The Shit I've Seen, you know, kind of jokingly, just try to capture all of these little short stories about people putting themselves in modestly precarious situations, usually involving alcohol and other, you know, things. And
you don't say.
Yeah, it happens. I don't know where these people come from, but it happens.
I've noticed that is
trust them with the security of our, you know.
I didn't want to say it, but yeah, I know.
So, anyway, she, I don't know if I want to say has the privilege of being privy to a lot of this stuff or just but she's been a part of a good chunk of this. And she goes, well, Brent, it sounds more like an HBO miniseries to me. And and then socializing that with you and Donzale, we came up with the concept, which haven't moved a lot off the treatment, but the treatment is filed. It's with the Library of Congress and the Screenwriters Guild. We have outlined the first season. We haven't scripted the first season, but we've got high level stories for 12 episodes. And now that Karen's retired, semi, she now runs. So we'll get back to, we need to talk about Desert Door at some point.
Yeah, we do.
And so Desert Door started a nonprofit, and now in Karen's retirement, she's running our nonprofit.
What? Tell us.
Brand new. We're getting it off the ground.
So
you're amazing, Karen.
Yeah, this is what a modern day grandma looks like, right? Yeah, pretty
amazing. Wow. So you're working and you're starting the nonprofit.
Mm-hmm.
See, women are the best, man.
Yeah, they are.
Honestly, that's not look, Karen, that's not easy. You're going silent on me. I know, but that's not easy. That's a lot of work. That's literally a second, not just a job. That's a second career.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah.
So I had the good fortune of being able to retire from public schools. And so now I have some new ventures, and this screenplay is one of them that we are planning to pick up. But in the meantime, this opportunity came to create a foundation to support land conservation. And you have a very passionate 5th generation Texan here, and all that brings with it. And I'm afraid for our country and our world that we're not going to have the resources that we've all grown up enjoying, and that shapes who we are. So anyway, there's a couple of things to think about, and that's another conversation a little bit later, probably.
Well, before we go into that, what are the things you're talking about? The things that's shaping those resources?
So when I grew up, I lived in the country, and there were farmers and ranches with land all around. I'd get on my horse, and a pack of us kids would ride our horses all over the countryside, and we would play. And the only rule was to be home by dark.
Right.
We had organic gardens and grass-fed cows, and it was just, and we didn't own those, but our community. Right. And what's happening is that those resources are going away. The land's being used up, for more and more development, and with that, the land can't support the wildlife. The water goes away. We have to have water. I mean, it's simple things. So we just have to be cognizant and educate our communities, and so that we all can take good care of what we have. So
kudos to you, Karen. Yeah, that's great. All right, Mr. Looby, talk about how we got into your current incarnation, the next chapter of your life.
Oh, you're talking about this little thing right here?
The one that I wish I could have, but it's not legal in my state yet, as I understand it.
You should be able to walk down to Total Wine and get some. You have a Total Wine nearby?
We're going to find out just how nearby Total Wine is. Yeah. Right on. When did that happen?
Oh, probably 7-8 months ago.
7 or 8 months ago. All right, Karen, that was beautiful, man. God, that's beautiful. I love that. I love that your head's and your heart is in that space, because that kind of stuff is really important. It's the foundational stuff. It's the little things that just kind of get glossed over time. Like Brent and I were talking earlier. He was talking. Remember in the beginning of the smartphone phase, and how Brent felt about things, right? Stay off the internet, get off Facebook, blah, blah, blah. And then you slowly relent. And likewise, we don't have to be an agrarian culture, but for the love of God, why are people going hungry in this country? And why are we fighting for water conservation and water maintenance? And why aren't the animals being taken care of? And by the way, it affects the atmosphere and. So anyway.
And thing, Dar, it was born out of Desert Door. Our foundation, Wild Spirit, Wild Places, was born out of the work at Desert Door.
So Desert Door is the name of the corporation or of the brand?
Of the brand, the Spirit.
The Spirit.
Okay.
So the new job that was born out of going back to graduate school.
So tell us about that.
Yeah, so like we mentioned earlier,
I love this.
Couldn't go back to, I just, the natural segue after you've done something for 20 years, you become institutionalized, right? I couldn't go back to engineering because I could barely do arithmetic. And so after doing the same thing for 20 years, it's either I'm going to go be an airline pilot, I'm going to be a government contractor, or I'm going to go in the defense industry. That's really what was left for me. That's the natural segues for somebody with my skill set. And so that's why I applied to go back to business school, just to see what else, might present itself. And because I'd had some pretty big jobs in the Marine Corps outside of being a pilot. And I thought, well, if I go learn how to communicate with the private sector, because they're very similar. They have staff, they have processes, they have budgets, they have organization, it's very, very similar. We talk about them in different ways. And so I thought I'll go back to business school, learn that, and then perhaps parlay my previous experience into the private sector. And at least that's what I sold her on. And so
You did a good job.
And
all right.
So, but I met my two partners, Ryan Campbell and Judson Kaufman, both veterans, Army Intel guy and a Navy SEAL. Because when you do an executive MBA program, it's like you go together as a cohort. The class that starts together finishes together. And the one thing I have learned is like business school teaches you a lot about business, but it doesn't teach you how to either start one or run one. So you learn.
No, not at all.
Yeah, but you do learn a lot about the functions of it and how they kind of operate. And so my partner, Ryan, who was on the fast track at one of the major consulting firms in the world, he came back he knew he wanted to start a business. That was not what I went back to business school to do. And so the great thing about like all of us having a military background, we didn't realize that we were going to team up initially, but there's shared values across your branches of service. So the sheer fact that, any of us served, you give that person, you give them the benefit of the doubt right out of the gate that that's a good person and I can probably trust that person. And so it was really important as far as how we established our, initial relationship. And there's this class at the University of Texas called New Venture Creation. And it's an elective class that, just like it sounds, you take an idea from concept through fruition, do the market research, validation, put the numbers around it, what your go-to-market, what your exit strategy, capture that in a business plan and a pitch deck. And there's no test per se. You do a couple of like case studies and write up a couple of 2-pagers on it, but there's no tests in it.
Yeah, how do you test that? I mean, how would you?
Right. Well, and ironically, so Ryan and I, I was reluctant to take the elective. it had already closed off and I had to ask to get in because that's not what I went back to school to do. And my partner, Ryan, was emphatic. He was like, Brent, I'm telling you, what you think you want to do is what I'm doing now, and it sucks. You do not want this life, regardless of what you think. And so take this class with me. And so I did. And he and I formed a team, and everybody, it's kind of funny. You have a class with like, 40 people in it, and there's like 20 different teams because everybody has an idea. And it's kind of like, who's going to outlast the other one as you start figuring out
Sure.
the team. And Ryan and I were trying to initially, graduate students, they want to tackle big problems, right? You're not trying to, split the atom necessarily, but you're trying to solve like real problems, big problems. And so we were initially dreaming big, like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos. We're going to, do things like unpiloted, cargo drones. We were going to like think FedEx, UPS, but without the pilots. We were going to try and
Smart.
Yeah,
Smart.
it'll be there eventually, but
Oh yeah.
What you realize pretty quickly is it's going to take a little bit, if not a lot of bit of money. And oh, by the way, the infrastructure and technology, there's facets of it that are there, but it's not mature enough to actually do that. It's just going to be way too expensive. So our Judson joined our team very late in the game, and being the pragmatic, he's like, guys, this is the only class in this entire curriculum that we get to actually choose what we study. Could we at least study something that's cool? And I was like, sure, what? And he's like, well, I always wanted to start a distillery. And then, the functional side of me goes, oh, that's intriguing. What do you want to distill? And he goes, I don't know, but I always wanted to start a distillery. And we're like, okay. So we went down the path of, we're going to start a distillery. And then you've got, I'm a 5th generation Texan. Judson's a 6th generation Texan. Ryan was one of those who, not a naturalized. He is a natural, not naturally born, but naturalized. He got here as soon as he could, and he married well. He married a good, good Texan lady. And when you think about it, like for you folks on the West Coast and everybody out there in virtual land, what may appear as unbridled arrogance to the exterior, if you're not from Texas, we simply call it pride here. That's all it is in Texas. Is just pure, yeah. It's just pride, Dar. It's not arrogant. But
check that off.
Yeah, but we wanted to make something that was, that we wanted to capitalize on Texas as a brand, because it is a global brand. I mean, you show the shape of Texas to some kid in, unsuspecting country somewhere else, and you put the outline of Texas, a rhombus or a rhomboid, what do you think they're going to recognize first? It's a very recognizable symbol. And, the culture, the mystique, everything, we were completely blind. So we wanted to capture on that, but we weren't sure what to capture on it. We wanted to, one of our cornerstones of our company is authenticity. It's like, if you were to make, how are you going to out Tito vodka? You can't, so anything else would just be another reach, or it just wouldn't be genuine. And so through probably 15 iterations, we stumbled across this little weed that grows abundant throughout the Chihuahuan Desert and all throughout Southwest Texas, southern New Mexico, southeast Arizona, northern Mexico. That's where the Chihuahuan Desert was. And there's this little plant called sotol out there that's been around for 10,000 years. And, there's a couple of distillers of it in Mexico, and we were literally passing around a bottle of this spirit in the parking garage at the university going, you think we can make it taste this good, at least half this good? And that's what we ultimately, actually, to take a step back, Judson and his partner in another venture came back from Puerto Vallarta, and he asked us if we'd heard of this thing called Ricea, which is one of those other esoteric agave-based spirits. It's very, regionally based. And we're like, no, what is it? And he goes, it's really good. So this was after we decided that we were going to do a distillery. For those that aren't familiar with the Cabo, are you familiar with Cabo Wabo, how it came to be?
No, not really. I mean, I just know it's Sammy's thing.
Yeah, so Sammy had a mom and pop down there that he absolutely loved. It was like his favorite tequila. And so he got, capital, helped invest, updated the distillery, helped him scale and distribute. And that's how Cabo Wabo came to be.
He's a good businessman.
Yeah, he's fantastic. And and the dude can rock. So love to meet him at some point. So for the purposes of class, keep in mind, we were just trying to get a grade in the class. We didn't realize that this was actually going to go to the market space.
So you guys were just kind of playing with it. You didn't say those words, but this was just having fun.
Yeah. And
Interesting. I love
so
that.
my when we had another friend in the class whose family, he grew up in the industry. His family started the first winery here. His brother started a very successful vodka company here, co-founder of that, and co-founded another successful tequila company here. So he's grown up in it. And we told him, like, hey, when you're down in Puerto Vallarta this week, get us some of that raicilla and bring it back up. We want to taste it. Because that was our plan, was that we were going to kind of follow the Sammy Hagar Cabo Wabo business model. We'd find a mom and pop raicilla distillery, then we would, you know, put money into it, scale it, and distribute. That was going to be our class project.
Okay.
Well, when he came back, he's like, I looked everywhere and I couldn't find it. So we're like, okay, well, now what? And so Judson, who's from East Texas, but spent a lot of time in Fort Stockton as a kid, hanging out with his uncle and their friends, he, through his Googling, said, I wonder if Sotol, because, you know, if you're Googling raicilla, other types of spirits come up, Bacanora, and Sotol was one of those. He goes, I wonder if Sotol, it's S-O-T-O-L, if that's that Soto that my uncle and his friends used to moonshine when I was a kid. Turns out that it was. And so we started doing a little bit digging deeper into it.
Okay.
I mean, every time you pull back a layer, it's like I'm still learning about this plant. I've been knee deep in this plant for 4 years now, and I'm still learning about the history and the importance and the impact that it's had on this part of the world. And so we decided that that's what we want. Why isn't anybody telling this story? Turns out, you know, nobody had been distilling Sotol since Prohibition. And matter of fact, during Prohibition, Pancho Villa used to run moonshine Sotol across the border during Prohibition. And it became legal. It was illegal to distill Sotol in Mexico until 1994. So, I mean, it's actually got a,
Really?
that's a whole nother conversation. But so
I have already shot. I'm sitting here and I've got the storyboard for a sizzle reel for that. That's a, that's a gem.
It's an amazing. And so interestingly enough, we're like, why isn't anybody doing this? And,
Yeah.
you know, largely it's just like, when you think about the brands that are available to us today are the brands that were being bootlegged during Prohibition. And so they're the ones that have grown today. And so nobody went back to revisit this. As one, it's, you know, very regionalized, and two, it's just hard to do. You know, it's you're taking raw, you know, plant, cooking it, processing, fermenting, distilling it. I mean, it's a lot of work. But
compared to what do they do when they make tequila, for example?
The preponderance, well, not even just tequila, they do that, but the preponderance of everything when you go into a liquor store, it's a market play.
Yeah,
you know,
it is. Yeah.
You know, when you look at just the thousands upon thousands of brands that are on the shelf, you're like, how do you believe that your brand is better than? And so we're going to come in and tell you that the way you've been drinking and imbibing all of your life, you've been doing it wrong. Here, my way is better than the way you've experienced. It's 100%. You know, it's the liquid inside of it has to be good, but the story has to be.
The story has to be all as good, if not better.
That's right.
It really is. Yeah.
And
let me ask you a question real quickly. Going back to what you said before about, in essence, you guys there was no pressure. This was just your project.
That's
Who
right.
knows what's going to come out of it? It's like, okay, well, let's do that. Okay, well, let's do that. Well, what if we do that, right? And as you tell me that, I mean, that's how you access the creative part of yourself. You know, you got to take all the pressure out and just play. But then there comes a point where you have to kind of, you know, well, so how do I do that? Now that we've got this, how would I do that? Do they engender that kind of? Do they foster that? Do they nourish that space? Do they even address the issue that, hey, you guys, you're in a creative space here, although this is a nuts and bolts, you know, business class. You know, you've got to be able to be creative, or is that not ever addressed?
No, in this particular course, that is 100% endorsed. Now, granted, there's boundaries on it, right? You know, because I mean, you can't just be out in la la land. You do have to have sound business principles underneath it, but it's 100% encouraged. And you know, for us, the challenge was the supply chain. You know, It's like, how do you get the plants? Let's not forget that I've never run a still, or I've never made booze myself. You know, I've drank a lot, but I've never actually made it.
So that's where you come in. You're the drinker, and the other guys bring their skill sets.
No, that's the interesting thing. Is like, so we are the perfect storm of misfits that just came together at the right time. You've got a creative guy who's really understands branding.
Yeah.
You know, a much more business-minded guy, and then you've got a guy that's operationally minded. So all of us kind of got together, and
wait, where do you fit in?
I'm the operations guy.
Oh, right, right. Is that what you're calling yourself these days?
Yeah.
Okay, no, that's true. You are that. You definitely are that.
So,
I mean, listening to you talk over the years would just be, you know, that would come up in conversation. I was like, wow, Brent really, like, it's a pragmatic approach, and it kind of helps bring it out of the ether and kind of make it real, which is critically important. And as you're telling me the story about the other two guys, it's like, wow, that's so wild. You all complement each other very nicely, and it's not easy to do. You know, going into business with anybody is it's a shit show.
yeah.
And you say, well, I'm going to have three, you know, there's going to be three of us, like triple shit show. But
Well,
here you guys are.
It can be, but that's when you have competing ideologies, right? And
Yeah.
so we had to get on the same page.
Yeah.
We had to get on the same page, right? And we're all carrying.
You say that like it's easy.
No, it is a process, and it can be really challenging. It's much easier when you come from shared. This goes back to the shared values, right?
Right.
And so, all being raised in the military, we really truly, I mean, I'm not going to speak for everybody, but I would argue that nobody on this planet has gotten better at their craft, whatever your craft is, by people telling you how wonderful you are. You have to be able to recognize your deficiencies, and your capabilities, accept constructive criticism, and be able to apply those to get better.
May I? I agree with you 100%. Well said. I always say the same thing. You know, it's great to have a healthy self-esteem, and it's great to have support and encouragement. Mm-hmm. However, you've got to be able to see the situation for what it is. Don't make it worse than, don't sugarcoat it. Which means what you just said, you got to be able to accept criticism. You got to be able to see your flaws and your weaknesses. You can't just be constant stream of positivity, because ain't nothing gonna happen.
No, matter of fact, this takes me back to when I was a flight instructor, shaping and molding young minds in the military. So you're welcome. And there was this one kid who, and I had several. I had three of them that were they were amazing kids. I had a lot of them, but these three that I'm thinking of in particular, and way better than I was at their level. You know, they just didn't have the experience, right? And so, like my dad taught me that, like, wisdom is what age and experience, combined. That's what.
Right.
And so I had that, and they didn't. But at that level, they were so much more talented than I was, and I could tell that there was one kid that was just literally getting by on his sheer talent. He wasn't putting in the time behind the scenes. It's just like, pick your craft, football guy who's amazingly gifted athlete, but doesn't watch the tape, doesn't put in the time in the weight room, and just goes out there. And then, but that plateaus at some point. And, somebody with a little more heart, a little more work ethic is going to beat you out. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I wish I'd coined this phrase. I didn't, but I asked him after, one of our training flights. And of course, he's coming in expecting me to tell him how wonderful he is. And I just kind of, did one of these. And I said, let me ask you a question. Is this your vocation, or is this a hobby for you? And he said, no, sir, this is my job. And I said, well, I wish I would have coined this, but I said, let me just tell you this. I said, amateurs work till they get it right. Professionals work till they can't get it wrong. Which one do you want to be? And I tell you what, that moment, he's no longer, he surpassed everything there. He ended up flying Hornets in the Navy and Joint Strike Fighter. And there's not a single qualification in any level of aviation that kid doesn't have. You know, I mean, he was one of the, and so he
Well,
rose.
I mean, that speaks to the character of the guy.
Yes.
It really does. That he can hear that, because there's, the cocky part, it's a fine line, man. It's a fine line to talk
And then
shit
he went,
and then back
he
it
went
up.
to Harvard
and still
Business School. He got his MBA from Harvard. So
That's okay. Well, good job. Well done. Well done.
Well, Dar,
So,
I'm gonna skip out.
You leaving us? Okay.
I have to. I'm looking forward to hearing the whole thing. I'm sorry to interrupt. But
No, are you kidding? It's great to see you, and I love hearing the story.
Can we take?
We both had to.
Well, as I learned from a great wise Marine aviator, you can't drink all day if you don't get an early start, Dar. So that's
See the pragmatism in that. So you guys, it's just amazing that you guys happen to meet up, and that's kind of the magic of any business, any artistic endeavor, any creation of any kind. But it is wild that you guys met up and you each had these individual strong suits, and then you kept it together, because it's like a band, like the Stones. How they stay together all this time?
100% like a band, and that's the thing where bands actually fail. You get together and you have all this creative energy and excitement, and then you don't, as you grow. I mean, bands are typically much younger when they start out, but they don't understand how to transition that the band is a corporation and it's a business, and you have to run it like a business. It's not like we're going to go, after the gig and we're going to like split up all the money. It's like you have to understand how to function the business side of it. And that's the things that escapes most. And so,
oh yeah,
we were truly, and you're 100% correct on the band. And so when we actually, like I mentioned earlier, that this process that you go through in this class culminates with a business plan and a pitch deck. Keep in mind, before going to business school, I didn't know what a business plan was, and really what that is this is your best opportunity to go tell somebody, hey, I want some money. That's
all it is. Yeah.
And this is what I'm going to do with your money. Good luck.
All it is. Yeah,
right.
Good luck.
Well, and so the class culminates with you pitching your idea to a panel of what would be angel investors, right? So think like Shark Tank, but it's, kid friendly. It's in an academic environment. So there's no money exchanging hands. So it's kind of, like velvet glove type stuff. And
right.
At the end of it, and we did get the highest grade in the class, by the way. But our project was much more literal Texas, going back to our Texas thing at first. So
right.
The name of our company was 100 Proof, and the name of our bottle was 1836. So that's when Texas won independence from Mexico. So we were extremely literal Texas in that. And one of the judges, and they are all active angel investors, one of the judges actually came up to us after the presentation. It was like, if you guys are actually serious about this, me and my husband want to talk to you. And that was the first time that we're like, because I thought we were just trying to get a grade, right? And the first time that Ryan and Judson and I looked at each other and we're like, I don't know, are you serious? I'm serious. And I was like, I said, I don't got a gig. So yeah, I'm retiring. I'm happy to make a run at this. And so those two were like, all right. So we took the feedback from that, and keep in mind, we still got another year of business school left. This is just in the middle of the business school.
Okay.
And that's the Germans on patrol.
They miss you. I can hear the bird. The bird's not happy that you guys were both on camera.
No, that's our bird dog. So actually, it's interesting. It's in this little menagerie that we call the house. And so I'll spare you from that. And so the bird is the first line of defense. And the bird and my dog, my girl, actually talk to each other. And so she's the heavy that comes in. It's like the bird's up in the front window, sees something that, heaven forbid, another dog's on the front sidewalk. And then
I love it. I love it.
there we go.
You're astute enough to mute yourself. I love it.
Yeah, no, it was, yeah.
I get it.
Come here, girlie. All right. Thank you. Keeping us safe.
Birds are everyone talks
Yeah.
about dogs. But if you really want to be alerted, you get a bird, trust me, no one will ever get near.
All right. You see,
There she is.
yeah,
It's all is
we're
well.
all safe now. Yeah.
That's all that matters. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's when the birth of it happened. When the VC comes up, it's like, hey, my husband and I would like to talk to you.
That's right. And you're going, oh crap.
Yeah,
No,
like
no.
someone's really interested in investing in this. Okay,
That's right.
now what do
And
we do?
so, going back to my comment earlier about understanding that, and taking and accepting constructive criticism and acting on that, under the, to try and be better, we realized that this class was only, it was 8 weeks long. And so we didn't have time to focus 100% and do the due diligence necessary to really go and ask for. None of us understood the spirit space. We didn't understand the manufacturing of it. We didn't understand we did the best we could with the time we had. But we knew that there was much, much more research that we needed to do. And largely it was around the supply chain. So, Tito, as you know him, Tito, I know him as the Godfather because he was he had the second distiller's permit in the country that wasn't he was the first in Texas, but the second in the United States outside of a major distiller. And
didn't know that.
Yeah. And God bless him. He's been a great friend and a great mentor to us. He's also another Longhorn as well. We had no idea what we were getting ourselves into. And thankfully, I don't think any entrepreneur understands what they're getting themselves into. Otherwise, you wouldn't do it.
You would never do it. Yeah.
You would never do it. If you get to a point to where you're at the apex and there's no turning back, that's what happens is you're like,
that's exactly it.
Yeah.
You've reached critical speed phase, whatever.
And you're like,
yeah.
And you can't turn back.
Yeah, you're going to crash either way. So let's go. Yeah.
So we took the feedback that we got from the classroom and we went back and did our more research, more due diligence, refined the plan, refined the pitch deck, and we entered an investment competition sponsored for young entrepreneurs. And out of 50 entrants, we placed third.
Oh, wow.
You heard about much more. And these are people with big ideas, and I'm pretty sure that none of them are in the market space. The girl who won it was going to be able to reduce the scrap rate of making semiconductors by like 50%, which you're talking like billions of dollars, but implementing that would probably take 2 decades to do. Speaking on coming from semiconductor, that's a bigger challenge. But yeah, so 3 guys making booze out of a weed that nobody's ever heard of,
But then, as a producer, as an investor, as a money guy, I'm looking at that and I'm like, okay, 3 military guys, so they understand structure and discipline, and they're going to show up. Mm-hmm. It's the alcohol space. It's recession. It's depression proof. It always makes money. And this is a great angle to different. Pardon?
Just about. This year, this year,
yeah,
this year
it goes
was
down, but.
Well, we'll get to the COVID year as well. Eventually, once we establish the fact that we've now started a distillery, but we went to that after that competition, and it was an extremely hostile environment, and so we felt
hostile for who though?
No, the judges were
brutal.
It was, yeah. I don't think they needed. There was one in particular. I don't think he needed to have it was modestly hostile, but
so he's trying to be Mr. Wonderful too, or something like that. Yeah,
that's right. His neighbor 2 doors down is a home brewer, and so he's an expert. Blah blah blah. But
personally, you guys got heat. Dude, that's not cool. Okay.
Well, missed the best part. I wish Karen was here because we had such different takes on this, and I'm sorry for the pause that we had to take. But so I sell the wife on, I'm going to go back to business school and parlay my military experiences into something so I can get like some senior executive, baby C-level job somewhere, Okay. And then I take this class and we start falling in love with what we're doing. Mm-hmm. And then Jessica at her graduation, I'm looking at my text messages and, Karen, Jessica are there, my in-laws, my parents, and we're about to go to the ceremony. And I was like, oh, this just got for real. And she's like, what? And I was like, we just bought a still. And she goes, how much does that cost? You know, and she doesn't remember it that way, but you know, it's like, and I told her, I was like, I asked you if we could, I don't know how to distill. I need a still. I don't know how to make alcohol. So we have to figure it out, right?
Hello. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we bought a little 15-gallon kettle and started moonshining in my garage on class weekends.
Amazing.
Yeah. So while the executive program is it's an interesting dynamic because you come in and it's every Friday and Saturday, basically every other weekend. And so moms, dads, you know, climbing the corporate ladder, come in, descend on the campus for a night, and then they're like, whew, no wife, no husband, no kids. After class, it's like, let's go out. Well, that fall, Ryan, his undergrad was in microbiology, so he could read the scientific reports and make sense of those things. We were trying to figure out how to cook this damn plant and ferment it and, you know, distill it. And so, interesting, we were like stealing plants off people's property. So the plant natively starts growing right here just north of San Antonio. And so we're jumping fence under the cover of dusk and ripping
Jesus
plants off
Christ.
people's property and chunking them in his trunk. You know, anybody driving around like, hey, don't mind us, you know.
Right.
We didn't figure out how to cook it. You know, we were roasting it, wrapping it in you know, on a green egg, steaming it, you know, and then on class weekends, he would bring up 2 homebrew buckets, you know, the folks that like the 6-gallon white buckets, bring them up on a Friday night after class. We'd run our little still out in my garage. And that's how we learned how to make Sotol. So,
I'm going to segue off that into something that's pretty cool. I didn't know about this, but you recently did an episode of Jesse James Garage. Is that what it's called?
yes, Monster Garage.
Monster Garage. That's it.
Yeah.
Jesse James, Monster Garage with Jesse James or whatever the title is, but it's Monster Garage. And Brent was on the episode of it. And I'm like, well, I'm asking my wife, how do we get it? It was Discovery Plus. So we get the Discovery Plus, we watch it. Nicely done. That's pretty cool. You guys took a car and turned it into a
mobile distillery. Yeah.
A mobile distillery, which is, listening to this now, like, I don't know. How much time did they actually give you? Were you on real time?
It's straight up it's on real time.
Okay.
And it was interestingly enough, you know, so they rebooted Monster Garage from the last episode, I believe was in 2006. And they did a reboot. We got an email to our info at Desert Door and said, hey, we're rebooting Monster Garage and we heard that, you know, we got introduced to you guys. We're looking for a distiller to be part of. We can't divulge too many details about the show, but you know, we're looking for a distiller. And so I followed up with a phone call, did like a 45-minute phone interview. And then of course, after that got asked to send in like the 2-minute gratuitous, you know, selfie video about why I'm the best candidate for the gig. And they came back and said, yep, you're in. And so we took, once you get the build team together, and keep in mind, these are professional, you know, fabricators and mechanics. This is what these are true artisans that this is what they do. And here's the guy that makes booze, right? You know, and so you talk about.
You said, he's like, what are you here for?
Yeah, I make booze. And so finding your way and being able to be contribute to that team was a very interesting experience, and one that they truly give you 5 days to do this build. And so you take, like we had nobody really knows, was it a 47 or a 48 Ford, but it was one of those years.
Right.
And had to build a still that was powered by the car. And so it wasn't rolling, it wasn't running, there was no engine in it. You know, we took that.
It was just a shell.
Yeah. And so we had to build the still, had to do all, and so Friday night at midnight, you're cut off. That's literally, and so we got that thing operational by like with 15 minutes to go. It was
I saw that. I was like, if this is not real.
No, it was real. And the tension, so we probably had one of the best teams that I've seen you know, as far as like everybody trying to, you know, push the rope in the same direction. But there was starting to get some tension there about, you know, 11:30 on Friday night. You know, it was, and,
Hey guys, this is not a joke. Yeah, we've had
Yeah.
all week to do this.
yeah, but it's a game show, right? It's supposed
It's
to,
exactly
you know,
right.
and I think one of the greatest, you know, in my years here as of late, acceptance is one of those words that I'm trying to incorporate into my
Good
daily.
for you, man. Good for
Yes,
you.
and
Right
about
on.
9 o'clock on Friday, I was accepting that if this doesn't work out, what other smoke gets, you know, to be on Monster Garage, right? You know, and
Amen. That's
so
it. That's it.
it was like, accept the fact that you even got a ticket to the show. It's, you know, it's so,
Exactly right. No, it's not it's no small feat. Like your 45-minute interview was the prelim. Like, okay, is this person a complete nut job?
mhm.
Are they going to be out of their minds? Or are they this, that? And you pass that, and then it's like, all right, let's do a little 2-minute selfie and sell us on why you should be on this show. And trust me when I tell you, there were probably at least, I'll be really conservative and say there were 75 to 100 other people trying to get on the show that were distillers.
I
And
don't know.
it's just, yeah,
They-
you know, you just have to have, you just don't know. Things come up, happen, life happens, illnesses happen, deaths happen, you know, psychotic breaks happen. It gets
Right.
weird when you're trying to cast a show. So, but it was good, and you looked good, and you're right. That's a smart thing to do. And you know, as an actor, it's a different set of circumstances. I know what I'm getting into. I know it's a performance of blah, blah, blah. Sometimes you go into a new situation like you did, and you're like, you're not only everyone's new guy, but you're like really new guy. Like, I'm not the car guy. This is called Monster Garage. I'm the distiller. I make
Yeah.
booze.
Yeah.
And it's a weird place to be. Like, how do I find my position here? What do I do? And
Right.
it's a TV show, and I got to keep it light and everything else. And damn, Jesse James is short.
Well, you know, I didn't know what to expect from Jesse because I obviously had never met him to this point, and
I've never met him either.
I can only see what, you know, everybody's seen on television, read in the you know, in the news, and I found him extremely gracious. He was a real professional. I mean, I enjoyed working with him. Apparently, he's toned down a little bit over the years.
I'm sure.
But it was kind of funny. When we finished the show, that the closing was at our distillery, and
I figured as much.
he actually talked to Karen about me and was like, I really was a little concerned. I wasn't sure how this was going to work out and how he was going to find his way and be a part of the team.
Hello, there you
Yeah.
go. There you go. Yeah. So I watched that, and I really mean that. Nice job. Nicely done. That you guys got it done's cool. That you did the whole concept is badass, and that you guys got to meet, went to your distillery and everything.
I don't know if you remember this or not, but this is one of those moments that, and it helped shape like some of my conversation for that audition, and even for our conversation today, was when you took me to that audition. Do you remember that?
I did not really remember it. But I do. Once you brought it up,
I think it was
like,
for you were going down to I think audition for ancestry.com if memory serves.
Good memory. Wow. Okay. So yeah, it was a commercial audition, and Brent and Karen were, I think, well, we're both of you, or was it just you?
It was just me.
So yeah, so Brent's in town, and we always make a rule that we, you know, there's a hotel Brent likes to stay at when he's here, and it's not too far from us, and like cool, and we go out, and we have dinner, and we talk, and it's great. And so I'm like, hey, Brent, look, man, I don't know what you think, but you want to come to just a stupid commercial audition? And he's like, okay, sure. And I took him to this place, and it's up on Sunset Boulevard. So we're just off the strip, and it's a major commercial casting office. And, you know, he's a big boy. I'm not walking you through anything. I'm not telling you. I'm just like, look, man, there's going to be a lot of nervous, fucking stupid actors in there. And, that would be me too.
No, but I didn't understand it. And it's one of those things, if you're on the outside looking in, and I completely get it now, because the second we opened that glass door, it was like I could feel the air being sucked out of my lungs, you know, because it was.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, because the tension is insane.
Yes.
And no one,
It's palpable.
if
It
I'm
is so
saying it's,
palpable. For those
okay,
of
so
us
this
that
is
aren't
a
in the
fighter
industry,
pilot telling
right.
me this. I'm like, fucking Brent, like, you know, flies and has to drop bombs and go to war and maintain the craft. And like, he's telling me the tension's off the charts here.
It's crazy. And it gave me such a great perspective for what you got, the environment and the industry that you work with. And so and going forward, if we're able to take FA to that level,
We will be.
we're going to have a production team that is proud and happy to come to work. And, you know, it's not going to be, I'm sorry, Dar, but your hair's not dark enough, or your eyes aren't blue enough, or I'm sorry, you know, all these things that people get nitpicked on, and it's not going to be that. People are going to be that we're going to have fun every day.
You
Just
know,
like,
most every production is like that. At least that's where everyone starts. And things go sideways, and people, you know, like you said, Jesse might have been a little more high strung. You brought it down. Well, there's a lot of pressure on Jesse's shoulders, you know,
sure.
and
No
when
doubt.
we get this show made, there's going to be a fuckload of pressure on both of our shoulders. And the system is there because it works.
That's
And
right.
that doesn't mean it doesn't have a shitload of flaws. And that's one of them. And it's just kind of unavoidable. And it's a weird place to be, but I'll never forget that. You're like, God damn, the tensions, you cut it with a knife in here. And I was like, yeah.
Right. I still remember this kid that looked just like he was off like off the set of Twilight. I mean, he looked just like that, you know, and he's on his phone and he's like, I was like, wow.
Yeah. It's all these beautiful people lined up.
They're like cockroaches. There is billions of beautiful people that look like they're like stormtroopers. I mean, every one of them.
There's a look, right? You can see the category. Right. It's very unnerving when you walk into a commercial audition, or even it's less that when you go to TV and film, but a commercial audition is a shit show unto itself. And it's wonderful and lovely, and it's a shit show. And you walk in, you go, huh? Like myself, at some point, finally, I'm slow to the party, a slow learner. I realized, oh, that's what they see me as. That's the little frame that they look at me as. And then me being me, I'm like, fuck that. That's not me, you know? And then the other part of me is like, shut up, asshole. It sells.
It goes to acceptance, Dar.
Exactly. And that's why I was getting back to, well said. And I was like, you know what? Okay, fine. If I shave and cut my hair, you know, like this is a rebellion of me being suit man for all those years. And at the same time, suit man gave me a career. Right. Yeah, it did. And I don't begrudge it at all, but you know, you got to spread your wings every once in a while. And I just had to accept the fact, okay, that's how I'm viewed, fine. And you know, this thing has been viewed in a whole way, like it blew people's minds. And I didn't work for a long time pre-pandemic. Well, I say didn't work, but my work went down to 20% of what it was. Because you know this face shows up, so the acceptance is key. Anyway, long story, but I love the fact that you saw that and you get it, and then you went through it with Monster Garage.
That whole like one last facet of Desert Door as it is now. So when you start your own company and you have this vision, and I would tell anybody out there, whether you're whatever industry you're wanting to get into, whether it's your industry or whether you want to be an entrepreneur, and I totally understand it now. You have to dream big and you have to follow through with it, because if you don't believe it, nobody else is going to believe it. So you have
That's so powerful, Brent. That's so true.
And so this little science project, little high school science project known as Desert Door, we're now 3.5 years in, has and this is the first time in your life that, you don't starting with like you're born, right? You didn't get to pick your parents. You don't get to pick your siblings. You get to pick your friends. But then if you're going to work or whatever, you don't get to pick who gets to be at work or who's in your class. This is the first time in life that, if you have your own organization, you get to pick and choose who gets to play, right? And it has attracted some of the most amazing personalities from all sorts of disciplines, from business minded to creative minded, and going back to you mentioned earlier in the conversation, tapping into creativity. This is one of those things that we're not just making, one of the greatest spirits in the country. It's, this is turning into like this amazing lifestyle brand. And it's because each of these people that are attracted to it just add to the value. And, it's just blossoming into this beautiful thing that people that you normally probably, they don't run in the circles that you're accustomed to running.
No, sir. No, sir.
And so you look around and you're like, wow, that's a person that with the exception of American Airlines trying to kill you, I probably would have never have crossed paths with this individual, and
That's right.
It's
beautiful.
Yeah, it absolutely has been a beautiful experience. And now it's even parlayed even deeper because our plants are wild harvested. The plant that we make our spirit from, we don't cultivate the plant. We don't water it. We don't fertilize it. I'm not involved in the life cycle of the plant at all until, as I like to say, until it's time to meet its maker, which is me. And so that goes back into the land management and the conservation and all those things. And so that's where kind of the genesis of Wild Spirit, Wild Places, our foundation that, Karen's running. Because land, they're not making any more of it.
That's right.
Unless you're in Japan, they do put it out, in Dubai, they also make it out there as well. Land at the root of it, you talk about just like the plants and the physical space, but it gets into the culture. People write songs about it. People, paint about it. People write about it. People develop cuisine around it, and
That's
so
right.
all of these things tie together, and it's extremely important to preserve, because if you don't take a moment to appreciate it, it'll be gone before you know it.
Oh man, that's beautiful. So the tagline of the show, I say this all the time: art is life and life is art. And that is a beautiful testament to the tagline of the show, because you set up to make this business, and it's viable and it attracts attention of VCs, and you guys are actually in sync with each other. There it is. That's a good looking bottle, by the way.
Well, thank you.
A really good looking bottle, which is like more than half the battle. It's got to attract my attention, right?
Well, so one of the going in premises was like, okay, Soto, who's heard of it? Answer is nobody.
Nobody.
That's right.
But that's a great differentiator. And that's your unique selling proposition. That's the thing.
It is
awesome.
But you also have the burden of educating.
And I was just going to say the biggest cash burn and churn, especially in a startup venture, which you are, is educating.
Right. And so our premise was like in my very thorough market research of sitting many, many bars across the state of Texas and New York and LA was, so we'll just throw out a number that less than 1% of the imbibing public knows what Sotol is. Even a fewer percentage of those people that even know what it is actually order it. Maybe if it's on a cocktail menu, but they might, but they're not asking for it. So we knew that we couldn't get people to actually go in and ask for Sotol, but we felt that if we could put it in a compelling enough package, we could get them to ask, hey, what is that? And so we looked across the bar, like what was eye-catching, right? In a sea of clear and brown across the back bar, every time, there was a different color, whether it be green, black, or blue, your eyes went back to it. And then so, we're self-taught distillers, we're first generation distillers, and we don't have a long legacy of like, this was passed down from my, great, great, great grandfather. What we're trying to do is tell a history lesson about this part of the world, and so it's in a ceramic bottle. It's got a few finer appointments on it that make it, relevant to today. But, the fact that it's ceramic, that's just a facet of the history lesson that like when indigenous peoples were able to actually drink. And so I probably should tell you a story about the plant. Is 10,000 years ago, nomadic tribes were actually like cooking this plant. They would they would dethorn the leaves, use it as a material for, weaving baskets, hats, sandals, mats, even caskets. It actually is very similar to an artichoke. It's called the desert spoon. And you can actually use it as a tool for eating or drinking, or you can,
Oh, wow.
you can bake the plant and eat it like an artichoke. They'd also made unleavened bread with it.
Oh, wow.
And probably the most important facet of this story is that as early as 800 years ago, out here in Southwest Texas, we have these wells that are like carved in rock formations because they would cook this plant in a shallow, what's called an earth oven, also known as a midden, where they would dig a shallow hole, they would build a fire, cover that fire in rocks, put whatever you're going to cook in it, in this case, sotol, cover that with more rocks, bury it, and leave it for 3 days. Then you come back, uncover it, and you would eat it. They found out that you could take these leaves, because there's, you know, natural yeast on it, and add water to it, and it would spontaneously ferment. And you could actually get like a, you know, a 2% beer off of it. So there's evidence out there in Southwest Texas, because there's paintings on the cave walls that show them imbibing during ceremonies. And just surmise that sotol was the first alcoholic beverage consumed in this part of the world. And then Spaniards came in the 1600s, brought the European distillation technology. And then now we know what we have is, you know, a distillate.
I think I remember reading about that many years ago. The first time was probably 30 years ago. Sotol.
So, sotol is a spirit that actually, it predates tequila.
Yeah. I think the guys who told me about it were Oaxacans that I knew at the time. And they were talking about sotol and they were talking about tequila. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And, you know, there was a language barrier, but that's the first time I heard about it. Anyway, interesting. All right.
And so like they're like, well, why did you pick ceramic? I'm like, well,
right.
So when the technology advanced to the point where people were drinking out of vessels or eating out of it, they weren't drinking out of glass, they were drinking out of pottery. So it's just, you know, we're trying to tell a history lesson. That's all we're trying to do is bring enlightenment to what the impact and the historical significance of this plant in this part of the world is what we're trying to do.
Right. You know, what you said earlier, and I was going to say, I forgot, but you guys are creating your story as it goes along.
Every new chapter.
Yeah, I'm going to encourage you to don't make a big deal out of it. Just turn your phone on, and anytime the mood hits you, just talk right in the camera about whatever's going on, and that'll be an invaluable part of your marketing. I know that sounds crazy or airy-fairy or artsy-fartsy, and that's okay. Let it be that. But there'll be gems in that thing. You know, I don't know how you'll use it if you actually use that footage of you selfing yourself. But
it's interesting you said it, like
write it down, whatever it is, you know. But
this has allowed me to tap into a side, you know, that I didn't realize that I had the creative.
I can tell.
Aspect, you know.
Yeah.
But
we're all creative, by the way.
Yes.
Everyone's creative. They just don't acknowledge that it's happening because they think it has to happen in this one certain specific thing. So yeah, I can hear it in your voice. I love it. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, it's actually turned out to be one of the, you could knock me over with a feather if, say, during my Marine Corps career, which I thought was probably, you know, my greatest contribution. I felt like I had given something back at that point, you know, that's
right.
And this has been emotionally much more exhausting, much more meaningful than anything that I've experienced in some time. Outside of initially getting my wings, that's
right.
I mean, so if you look at my I Love Me box up there, I mean, you would think that I was a third world general, but you know, the one thing that I truly feel that I did earn through that experience was actually just landing on the boat for the time that allowed me to be a naval aviator. That was the one thing that I feel like I truly earned, because nobody else could help me do that. And this is just as meaningful. And now, you know, we've got 40 employees, you know, and so taking care of those guys and making sure that, you know,
people looking up and counting on you, looking up to you.
That's right. And
yeah,
you know, there's a tremendous amount of responsibility that goes with making sure that those guys are taken care of. And then you throw in a pandemic and you're like, well, crap. for an up and comer. You know, we're not Jack Daniels, we're not Tito's, you know, we're not. And so that's when, you know, when you have a great team like we do, Ryan and I initially were like, there's an opportunity. You know, this was even before the shutdown. We were like, we saw it coming, and we realized that there was opportunity, but we didn't know what that opportunity was. Nor did we realize that we weren't going to make any money off of it. Initially, you go into opportunity like, how do we manage this?
How do we profit from it, right?
So what we ended up doing was, we were, as best I can tell, this is not hard data, but we were the first in the distillery in the country to switch over to making hand sanitizer at scale. So we were the ones that were actually like we stopped production, and this is what we do. It wasn't a side project. And we made the poor business decision, you know, financially speaking, to give it away. So we're like, there's no hand sanitizer in the country. I couldn't make toilet paper, but I could make hand sanitizer. And so we ended up, over the course of 6 weeks, donating to, we started out with first responders, you know, all the first responders in hospitals. And then after we started getting those guys set up, and the country started opening up a little bit, the next line of defense was like restaurants and bars and stuff. So we started giving hand sanitizer to those guys. And then everybody started kind of getting into the game a little bit. And we decided it was at that point that we need to switch back over and, you know, and doing what we do.
Sure. Yeah.
We ended up donating 9,300 gallons of hand sanitizer to
Wow.
the state of Texas.
Well, you guys got a little press coverage out of that on Fox News, I remember.
We were blessed with a lot of coverage, actually.
You did get a lot. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, because I mean, it's like you said, you guys lost money, you're veterans, you did a complete pivot. And it's one of those things, you know, it's a divisive time right now in our country. And it's not good, because united we stand and divided we fall. And then even that whole concept of country and stuff kind of gets crazy to me, but I digress. You realize when the shit hits the fan, just like you guys realized when the pandemic came, that there's an opportunity there. But what I mean to say is, you know, I really believe in this, and I think it's been written about in Think and Grow Rich, that old classic book Napoleon Hill wrote. But inside of every problem or challenge or bad thing, whatever it is, there's a seed of an equal or greater benefit from it. And it's just up to us to choose, you know, what we're going to focus on and what we're going to allow to take up the bandwidth that we're given every day in energy and focus. And, you know, it's easier said than done, no doubt. But this is one of the reasons I believe that out of these things, these bad things, that you start to realize, man, I've got more commonalities with all these people than I've got differences. And even in your story, it happened where you realize, like, I would never come across that person. They would never come across me. And like, this is so amazing. And my skill set's completely different from their skill set, yet we're still working toward a common goal. And I mean, that's where it's at.
And that's one of the beauties of you're absolutely spot on, but that's one of the beauties of the military as well. You have people from all walks of life.
Right on.
All social, yeah. And that's one of the things that, like, you talk about the divided aspect today that is so troubling to someone like me. Now, you and I are obviously in the category where nobody wants to hear about our problems, and, you know, but I feel that I can comment from a unique perspective in that I completely understand what it's like to entrust my life and well-being to another individual that may or may not look like me, may or may not be from the same background that I am. And that person likewise trusts me with their well-being, you know?
Right.
And, so those are great values that the military can provide you, is that, you know, we're all in this together. I've actually distilled it down to that life is a cooperative endeavor, and we're all part of this, you know, and it can be something as gracious as, you know, the butterfly on the other side of the planet, but it's really, in my opinion, let's talk about going to work, commuting. If you're on the 405 and it's rush hour, that person who realizes at the last second, regardless of why they realize at the last second, they need to get in front of you and they turn their blinker on, fucking let them in. You know, I mean, it's just like, can we all just have a little common decency and respect for one another? You know, everybody's got their own thing and their own whatever bubble they live in, but you know, it gets down to like commuting. It's like we're all commuting, right? And
I mean, that's pragmatism again. It's true though. I like that viewpoint. And I like that perspective.
And to the Fisher King, I want you to understand, I have not quoted one movie line in this whole thing, but you know, when Robin Williams said, you know, all we need is, you know, a little human decency, compassion, and a Navy blazer. You know, we could probably skip the Navy blazer, but you know, just a little respect and a little, you know, compassion.
It goes along. I know it sounds so trite and trivial, and we are sound like these two guys. And you're right. I can never complain about anything. Trust me. I feel you. If you're going through tough times, we're all going through it. But you know, just a simple kind act, like when you're commuting on the 405 or the I-10 or the 5 or wherever you are, whatever part of the country you're in, you know, I-75, whatever, right? If you can remember to keep your head, as it's been said many times, when all around you are losing theirs, you know, and then extend just a little bit of courtesy. Here's the kicker. Here's the kicker. The other person's going to feel however they're going to feel, right? Thankful, grateful, goddamn you, F you, whatever. But what happens to you, knowing that you didn't react in a shitty way, in a bad way, in a way that you wish you hadn't, is going to be, that's where the magic happens, because you actually realize, I feel better giving than I do receiving.
Absolutely.
It's crazy, right? Like I remember reading that when I was a kid and I was like, what? But,
except one time that the drunk asshole stepped on my dog, which we will talk about off of camera. That was not well received, but well,
I mean, there are no hard and fast rules. Life isn't the shades of gray.
That's right. Yeah. We weren't cooperating at that point.
Listen, I want to stop it right here because we could go for a long time, but I just want to say thank you for this, for your time. I know you're busy. I know that, you know, you got 40 people you're looking after, and they're looking out to see which way the ship's going to be guiding. You got your wife, you got the foundation, you've got the dogs, you've got your bird, you've got the house, your family, your grandchildren, your kid, your daughter. I mean, you had a full plate. So thanks for sharing this. I love this. And I think everyone who watches is going to love it. And I know you said 15 people are going to watch this. I think it's probably more like 3 people. And 2 of them live in Pakistan and 1 lives in Eastern Japan. So,
the only ones that I'm worried about are your wife and my wife. So if either one of us came off of this.
My wife doesn't watch anything. No, it's just all about my wife all the time.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. No, I'm not. I'm kidding. No, I'm not. But listen, I want to come back and do this again, and I want to talk more about the Sotol, and maybe, I don't know, maybe I'll even travel there when things kind of get a little more settled and we can do like a taste test or whatever. And I've got a killer idea for you in the brand in terms of a video that I think you guys might like.
Well, I'm sorry it took me this long to actually. This goes back to me being afraid of the interweb.
I know who I'm talking to. I know, and that's why I really do mean that. I really do. Thank you, because I know how you feel, and I know where. More importantly, I know where it comes from, and you are not wrong about any of it. And those things go through the back of my mind. On top of the fact that I'm married to a civil rights leader's daughter. On top of the fact that I was considered and still am, I think to this day, an anti-government terrorist, which is a whole other conversation.
Is that the Persian thing, or is that your Twitter?
No, that's not the Persian. And then there's the Persian thing. My dad used to work for the Ministry of War, so there's that. Yeah. Just side note again, I'll tell you, you know this, but anyone who hasn't listened to it, if they're still here, we got invited to the White House twice, but they wouldn't let me in the physical premises. I was like, why? Oh, you just didn't clear security. I was like, got it. Got it. So I get nervous when I do these things. I get nervous when I go on a set in a good way,
Well,
but I'm always like,
No, I tell you what, the reason why I'm here and why I'm doing it is that I absolutely love you. I love your wife.
same here, man. Same here. You guys are really good people. Really good people. Yeah.
Well, we're trying. I mean, we're trying to get better every day. That's all you can do, right?
That's all. I'm just trying, man. I'm gonna go out swinging. I'm not gonna watch the pitch go by me. To use the baseball analogy, I'm gonna
Just still
keep
trying to
swinging.
learn is, and I'm still learning. One of my things my dad has taught me as of late, and I didn't think that I could, I mean, my dad is all of our parents, we are products of, who we are. And
100%.
Fortunately, I had great parents. But his thing is, if you don't know why you think what you think, you're not thinking.
Wow. Wow. Okay. I love it.
Well, so I've been challenged. So it's like, okay, I need to do a little more research,
Well, I like that about you though, man. You think, you're always thinking about it. You have a position, you can explain it. And, we need a little more of that in this world. Yeah. Brent, man, thank you. Thank you so much.
Love
All
you.
right. Love you too, buddy. Awesome.